Welcome back to our channel. Hayley had always built her life around the illusion of control. It was a skill she cultivated through years of calculated choices, concealed emotions, and meticulously orchestrated relationships. Every secret she kept was another brick in the fortress she had erected around herself, a boundary no one was ever supposed to cross. But Naomi's discovery shattered that boundary in an instant, cracking open a part of Hayley she never allowed anyone to see. For the first time in a long while, fear seeped through the cracks, a bitter, metallic taste that clung to her tongue as she realized how close everything was to collapsing. Randy stood across the room from her, shoulders tense, face pale beneath the dim light. He had been the perfect accomplice, quiet enough to obey, desperate enough to follow, and morally flexible enough to pretend he wasn't destroying himself with every step deeper into Hayley's world. But even he wasn't prepared for how far she would go to protect what she had built. When Naomi uncovered their plans, when she pieced together the connection between the missing documents, the hidden transfers, and the staged accidents, Hayley felt her entire world teeter dangerously on the edge. And she knew with cold certainty that Naomi would not stay silent. What frightened Hayley most was not Naomi's knowledge, but Naomi's moral clarity, a strength Hayley had underestimated. Naomi wasn't like the others, she wasn't seduced by charm or bribed into complicity. She was persistent, principled, and unafraid to dig deeper when something felt wrong. It was this unyielding drive, this refusal to ignore the truth, that made her such a threat. And Hayley, who had built her existence on manipulating perceptions, could not afford a threat like Naomi. Randy watched Hayley as she paced the room, her movements sharp and precise, each step a manifestation of the turbulence raging inside her. He had seen her angry before, had seen her mask slip for brief moments, revealing the ruthless determination beneath. But this was different. This was primal, frantic, desperate. The kind of desperation that only comes from feeling everything one has built about to be ripped away. He felt his stomach twist as he realized what her next step would be. He could feel the words she hadn't said yet pressing into the air, suffocating him with their weight. His breath became shallow, his skin clammy, and yet he couldn't move away. He was trapped, not by physical force, but by the choices that had led him here. Every compromise, every favor he had done for Hayley, every small betrayal he had convinced himself was harmless had piled up around him, constructing a prison he couldn't escape. Inside, Randy's thoughts churned violently. He replayed the moments that brought him to this point, the night Hayley manipulated him with promises of power, the afternoon she confided in him about the problem they needed to quietly remove, the long hours spent carrying out tasks he pretended not to think too hard about. He had been naive enough to believe that once he stepped into Hayley's world, he could eventually climb out again, cleansed of guilt and free to start over. But now, with Naomi standing between them and exposure, Randy understood he had crossed a line he could never return from. Hayley finally stopped pacing, her gaze settling on Randy with a cold stillness that made his blood thrum in his ears. She didn't need to speak aloud, the command etched itself into the room like a scar. She wanted Naomi gone, permanently, irreversibly. And she expected Randy to do it. For a moment, Randy felt the floor give way beneath him. His mind reeled as conflicting emotions tore through his chest with brutal force. Part of him recoiled in horror at the thought. Naomi didn't deserve this. She had simply followed her instincts, pursued the truth, refused to be misled. She was strong, determined, and frustratingly moral, everything Randy wished he had been. Another part of him was consumed by fear, a suffocating, all-encompassing terror of what Hayley would do to him if he refused. He had seen glimpses of her cruelty before, glimpses of the kind of person she became when cornered. If he stood against her now, he knew she would destroy him without hesitation. But beneath the terror and guilt simmered another feeling, a darker, more shameful resentment. Naomi's discovery threatened to expose not only Hayley's schemes but Randy's own role in them. If she revealed everything, he would lose more than his freedom. He would lose the fragile sense of self he had spent years pretending still existed. Her determination felt like an accusation, a spotlight shining directly into the shadows he had learned to live in. The more he imagined Naomi speaking the truth aloud, the more he felt cornered by the consequences. The anger he felt toward her wasn't fair, and he knew it, but it didn't fade. If anything, it intensified. Hayley felt Randy's hesitation like a tremor in the air. Deep inside, she feared it. His loyalty had been reliable until now, but loyalty tested by morality was a fragile thing. And yet she couldn't afford fragility. Not now. Not when Naomi's discovery threatened to pull everything apart. Her fear mutated into fury, not just at Naomi for uncovering the truth, but at herself for allowing the situation to slip out of control. She prided herself on anticipating every variable, every danger, every potential threat. But she had grown comfortable, confident that her manipulations would always work, that the people around her would never question her motives. Naomi's persistence had exposed the arrogance behind that assumption. Hayley hated her for it. She hated the vulnerability the situation forced her to confront. But beneath all the anger lay the darkest truth of all: Hayley felt betrayed. Naomi, who had once been part of her inner circle, someone she trusted with tasks she trusted no one else to handle, someone she believed too naive to ever be a threat, had dared to challenge her. Had dared to see through her. That betrayal stung more deeply than she wanted to admit. It ignited a cold, merciless resolve inside her, a resolve that manifested in the unspoken order she delivered to Randy. Naomi, unaware of the violent storm gathering around her, spent the hours after her discovery in a haze of emotional turmoil. Her heart pounded with the weight of what she had uncovered, with the understanding that the conspiracy was larger, darker, and more dangerous than she could have imagined. She tried to steady herself, but her thoughts spiraled as she realized she was alone in this, isolated, vulnerable, and hunted without even knowing she was prey. Her anger toward Hayley burned hot beneath her fear. She replayed every moment that had seemed suspicious, every sidelong glance, every carefully constructed lie. The betrayal cut deeply not because she hadn't expected manipulation from others, but because she had never expected it from Hayley, the woman she had once admired, once trusted. Naomi's sense of betrayal mingled with a fierce determination that strengthened her resolve. She knew she needed proof. She needed a way to expose everything before it was too late. But what she didn't know was that time was slipping away far faster than she could imagine. Randy spent the night spiraling through conflicting thoughts, each one dragging him deeper into the pit of despair. The weight of Hayley's order crushed him from all angles. His conscience screamed at him, tearing at the remnants of morality he had managed to preserve. His fear gnawed at him relentlessly, reminding him of the consequences of disobedience. And his resentment fueled the worst possibilities in his mind, whispering that the only way to save himself was to follow through with the one task Hayley demanded. The internal war raging inside him consumed him so completely that he barely slept. By the time the sun rose, he felt hollow, brittle, on the verge of cracking under the weight of conflicting loyalties. But Hayley's shadow loomed in every corner of his thoughts, suffocating any hope of escape. In the end, fear and desperation drowned out every other emotion. Hayley observed Randy closely throughout the day, studying every twitch, every flicker of guilt in his eyes, every tremor in his hands. She saw the conflict inside him but refused to acknowledge any part of it that might threaten her plan. She needed him ruthless, obedient, quiet. She needed him willing to bury the evidence of her failure under the cold silence of finality. Her gaze hardened as she reminded herself that she had already pushed too far to back down now. She would rather destroy everyone around her, including Randy, than let Naomi expose the truth. As the hours passed, the tension between them thickened until it suffocated the air itself. Randy moved through the motions of preparing for what lay ahead, though each step felt like a betrayal not only of Naomi but of the man he once hoped he could be. His heart pounded with dread as he imagined confronting her, as he imagined the fear in her eyes, the realization that he had chosen self-preservation over morality. Naomi, meanwhile, remained consumed by her search for evidence, unaware of the noose tightening around her. She felt a creeping sense of unease she couldn't quite identify, as though she sensed danger lurking just beyond the edge of her awareness. But she refused to let fear paralyze her. She pushed forward, determined to bring the truth to light no matter what it cost her. It wasn't until the late hours of the evening that the storm finally converged. Randy found himself standing at Naomi's door, trembling, drenched in the cold sweat of impending violence. Every instinct inside him screamed to turn back, to confess to Naomi, to beg her for forgiveness. But the echo of Hayley's command clung to his thoughts like chains. He felt trapped in a nightmare from which waking was no longer possible. Naomi opened the door, and the instant their eyes met, something inside her shifted. She saw the guilt, the panic, the regret entwined with something darker in Randy's expression. And in that moment, she understood. The realization struck her with such force that her breath caught in her throat. Betrayal layered over betrayal, a suffocating weight that stole her voice. Randy hesitated. That hesitation cracked open the truth behind the man he had become, a man torn apart by fear, manipulation, and his own failures. For the briefest moment, Naomi saw not a monster but a broken soul clawing desperately for a way out of the darkness he had willingly stepped into. But hesitation wasn't enough to undo the damage already set in motion. Hayley, miles away, waited in silence, her heartbeat steady, her expression unreadable. She knew Randy's loyalty was on the edge of collapse, but she trusted fear to push him over. In her mind, the decision had already been made. Naomi was a threat, and threats needed to be erased. What none of them understood, not Hayley, not Randy, not even Naomi, was that this moment would become the pivot upon which all their lives would twist into irreversible ruin. Hayley's desperation, Naomi's courage, Randy's internal war, all of it collided in one brutal, agonizing instant that would change everything that followed. And as the night deepened, as the walls pressed in around them, as the weight of their choices bore down with suffocating force, each of them crossed a threshold they could never come back from. They were now locked in a chain reaction of fear, betrayal, and consequences that would tear apart every carefully constructed illusion they had ever relied upon.